The hushed reverence of Professor Alistair Finch's advanced quantum physics lecture at Oakhaven University, a reverence he cultivated with tyrannical zeal, was shattered by a quiet, respectfully raised hand. It belonged to Mr. Aris Thorne, a mature student, a black man whose unassuming attire and quiet demeanor contrasted sharply with the often arrogant posturing of the younger doctoral candidates. He had enrolled under a special visiting scholar program, his reasons kept deliberately vague. Professor Finch, a man whose considerable intellect was matched only by his colossal ego and thinly veiled prejudices, paused mid-equation, a look of profound irritation creasing his face. "Yes, Mr. Thorne?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension, deliberately mispronouncing the name slightly. "Do you have a question that couldn't wait? Or are you perhaps struggling with the rudimentary concepts of wave-particle duality, something most of these students grasped in their undergraduate studies?" A few sycophantic chuckles rippled through the lecture hall. Aris Thorne, unfazed, rose slowly. "Professor Finch," he began, his voice calm, measured, and carrying a surprising depth of timbre. "Thank you. My question pertains to your assertion regarding the Copenhagen interpretation's limitations in addressing quantum entanglement across superluminal distances. Specifically, have you considered the implications of the recently revised Bell test inequalities, particularly those incorporating localized hidden variable theories as proposed by Dubois and Al-Khatib in their latest monograph? It would seem to suggest a potential flaw in your presented Hamiltonian." A stunned silence fell over the lecture hall. The question was not rudimentary. It was extraordinarily advanced, referencing cutting-edge, almost esoteric, theoretical physics. It was also a polite but devastating intellectual challenge to Finch's entire lecture premise. Professor Finch's face, moments before smugly self-assured, began to mottle with an ugly, incredulous rage. He stared at Aris Thorne as if Thorne had just sprouted a second head that quoted Shakespeare in Klingon. It was clear he was either unfamiliar with the specific research Aris cited, or, worse, he understood it and knew his own lecture was now exposed as outdated or flawed. His ego would not tolerate such a public undermining, especially from this student. "Dubois and Al-Khatib?" Finch finally spluttered, his voice rising to an almost hysterical shriek. "Monographs? Hamiltonian? Flaws? Mr. Thorne, are you attempting to impress this class with a string of pretentious, undigested jargon you clearly gleaned from some online forum? Or are you simply too fundamentally obtuse to grasp the established, accepted principles I have so patiently laid out?" He slammed his hand on the lectern. "Let me be unequivocally clear, Thorne, for your benefit, and for the benefit of anyone else here laboring under similar delusions of intellectual adequacy. You are too stupid to be in this course. You are too stupid to be at this university. Your questions are not insightful. They are the blatherings of an ignoramus trying to punch far above his intellectual weight. You are an embarrassment to this institution, and an insult to the very concept of higher learning." He was practically screaming now, his face contorted with fury. The class was frozen in shocked silence, some students looking horrified, others, Finch's acolytes, beginning to snicker nervously, taking their cue from their enraged professor. Aris Thorne did not raise his voice. He did not flush with anger. He simply met Professor Finch's venomous gaze, his own eyes calm, deep, and holding a profound, almost sorrowful understanding. "Professor," he said, his quiet voice cutting through Finch's tirade with an almost surgical precision, "you will come to regret those words. You will regret this outburst, this profound lapse in academic integrity and basic human decency, more than you can possibly imagine." Finch threw back his head and laughed, a harsh, ugly, dismissive sound. "Regret them? I? Regret speaking the plain truth to an intellectual charlatan? Oh, I assure you, Thorne, the only regret here will be yours when you inevitably fail this course and are quietly advised to pursue a career more suited to your limited capacities, perhaps basket weaving or advanced remedial studies." He turned to the class, a sneer plastered on his face. Let this be a lesson to all of you. True scholarship requires humility and a respect for established authority, not the arrogant posturing of a know-nothing. Class dismissed. He stormed out of the lecture hall, his academic gown billowing behind him like the cape of a petty, defeated villain. The students began to file out, some casting sympathetic, if fearful, glances towards Aris, others openly snickering and mimicking Finch's insults. Too stupid for this university. One particularly odious acolyte of Finch's stage whispered as he passed Aris, then guffawed with his friends. Aris Thorne remained standing by his seat for a long moment, a profound sadness in his eyes. This is what academic discourse had become. In Finch's classroom, this arrogant gatekeeping, this fear of intellectual challenge, this blatant, ugly prejudice. He had come to Oakhaven University under a quiet sabbatical, hoping to observe modern pedagogical methods, perhaps even to anonymously mentor a few bright young minds, to reconnect with the simple joy of learning after years in the rarefied, often isolating world of cutting-edge theoretical research and global scientific policy. Instead, he had found a petty tyrant ruling a kingdom of fear. Later that day, the humiliation continued. Professor Finch, clearly still seething, had apparently made good on his threat. Aris received an official-looking email from the physics department head, a known crony of Finch's, strongly advising him to withdraw from Finch's advanced course to avoid further academic embarrassment, and suggesting he enroll in several foundational undergraduate physics refreshers. The email also contained a veiled threat about his overall suitability for the visiting scholar program, being reevaluated based on concerning reports of disruptive behavior and a fundamental lack of preparedness for graduate-level discourse. It was a clear, concerted effort to silence him, to discredit him, to drive him out, all because he had dared to ask an intelligent question, a question that had exposed the professor's own intellectual insecurity. Aris looked at the email, then at the frame photo on his modest rented apartment's desk. It was a photo of him, a few years younger, standing in Stockholm, a heavy gold medal around his neck, shaking hands with the King of Sweden. A faint, enigmatic smile touched his lips. Professor Finch and Oakhaven University were about to receive an education of an entirely different and far more public caliber. The basket weaver, it seemed, had a few surprises yet to unveil. Dr. Aris Thorne did not, as Professor Alastair Finch and his compliant department head had so arrogantly advised, withdraw from the advanced quantum physics course. Instead, he replied to the department head's threatening email with a meticulously polite yet legally unassailable letter. He respectfully refuted the accusations of disruptive behavior and lack of preparedness, reiterated his commitment to scholarly discourse, and subtly pointed out that Oakhaven University's own academic freedom policies encouraged robust intellectual exchange even when it challenged established viewpoints. He also, quite deliberately, CC'd a copy to the university provost's office and the faculty senate's ethics committee simply for their information and records. This act of quiet, principled defiance sent Professor Finch into a near apoplectic rage. How dared this nobody, this visiting scholar of dubious origin, challenge him? Professor Alastair Finch, the tenured titan of theoretical physics, the man whose pronouncements were usually received with hushed awe, or at least feigned reverence, by students and junior faculty alike, he vowed to make Aris Thorne's academic life at Oakhaven University a living hell, a public spectacle of intellectual evisceration. And so began Finch's reign of targeted academic terror. In subsequent lectures, Finch made it his personal mission to humiliate Aris. If Aris raised his hand, Finch would either pointedly ignore him or, with a theatrical sigh of exasperation, allow him to speak, only to then publicly ridicule his question or comment, no matter how insightful or valid. "Ah, Mr. Thorne," Finch would sneer, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "back with another of your charming misunderstandings of basic tensor calculus? Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in Physics 101? Though even that might be a stretch, for your unique intellectual gifts." He would then direct overly simplistic, almost insulting questions at Ares, cutting him off before he could offer a nuanced answer, then turned to the class with a knowing smirk, as if to say, "See? Hopeless." When Aris submitted meticulously researched problem sets or insightful response papers, work that, in any other academic setting, would have earned him top marks and professorial praise, Finch would either misplace them, return them, ungraded with a dismissive scrawl of superficial and unconvincing, or worse, publicly dissect them in class, deliberately misinterpreting Aris's arguments, twisting his words, and holding them up as examples of pseudo-scientific gibberish and the dangers of an untutored mind grappling with concepts far beyond its ken. The sycophantic doctoral candidates in the front rows, eager to curry favor with their powerful and vindictive professor, would titter dutifully. The few students or junior faculty members who recognized the profound intelligence in Aris's quiet contributions, or who were repulsed by Finch's blatant bullying, remained silent, cowed by Finch's notoriously punitive nature and his iron grip on departmental politics. How could an institution dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge tolerate such a grotesque abuse of academic power, such a naked display of prejudice? Finch's campaign extended beyond the lecture hall. He began to subtly, and sometimes not so, subtly, poison Aris's reputation within the department and the wider university. He'd make pointed remarks in faculty lounge conversations about certain visiting scholars who overestimate their abilities and disrupt the serious work of real academics. He'd accidentally leave anonymous, disparaging comments about Aris on internal university forums discussing course feedback. He even tried to block Aris's access to specialized research databases and interlibrary loan services, claiming Aris's ill-defined research project didn't warrant such resource allocation. Aris, amidst this escalating academic siege, maintained an almost preternatural calm. He continued to attend every lecture, his expression attentive, his notebooks filling with meticulous observations, not just of quantum physics, but of Professor Finch's increasingly erratic and unprofessional behavior. He continued his own private research in his modest off-campus apartment, a haven of quiet, intellectual ferment. Here, surrounded by stacks of advanced physics journals and corresponding with Nobel Laureate colleagues across the globe via secure, encrypted channels, he was finalizing his latest theoretical paper, a groundbreaking work on the unification of gravitational and quantum field theories that was already generating intense, hushed excitement within the highest echelons of the global physics community. The hints of his true identity, his towering stature in the world of science, continued to be comically, tragically, and willfully ignored or misinterpreted by the increasingly obsessed Professor Finch. One afternoon, a courier delivered a very important, heavily sealed package to Aris's apartment from the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences in Stockholm. It contained confidential materials related to his role on the Nobel Committee for Physics, a position of immense trust and global scientific influence. Mrs. Higgins, Aris's nosy landlady, and a close friend of Professor Finch's wife, saw the official-looking package with its impressive foreign insignia and immediately called Finch. "Alistair, dear," she'd whispered conspiratorially, "that strange Thorne fellow, the one you said was a bit slow? He's getting mysterious packages from Sweden, with crowns on them. He's probably involved in some kind of international espionage, or maybe he's an exiled prince trying to reclaim his throne through physics." Finch, whose paranoia now readily embraced any narrative that painted Aris as a charlatan or a madman, readily agreed. Espionage, or delusions of grandeur, it all fits. The man is clearly a dangerous fantasist. Another time, Aris was on a video call in a quiet corner of the university library, speaking with the president of Caltech and the director of CERN about co-chairing an upcoming global summit on the future of particle physics. His voice, though low, was clearly that of an equal, discussing billion-dollar budgets, international collaborations, and the selection of keynote speakers, including several other Nobel laureates. One of Finch's more ambitious and less scrupulous doctoral students, tasked by Finch to keep an eye on Thorne, overheard snippets CERN budget overruns, Higgs boson follow-ups, scheduling conflicts with the Kyoto Prize ceremony. He eagerly reported back to Finch. Professor Thorne was in the library on a very suspicious call. He was talking about CERN. Isn't that some kind of secret underground lab? And Higgs boson. That's that doomsday particle, right? And the Kyoto Prize. He's probably involved with Japanese techno-spies. He's not just stupid. Professor, he's a dangerous international con artist making up these fantastical connections. Finch nodded grimly. Excellent work, Henderson. This just confirms my suspicions. He's not just an academic fraud, he's a global menace. We need to escalate this to the University Ethics Committee. We need him expelled. The final straw for Finch, the act that pushed him over the edge into full-blown self-destructive hubris, was when a small independent student newspaper, known for its investigative zeal, published a short, anonymously sourced piece titled, "Is Oakhaven University harboring a hidden genius, or silencing a necessary critic?" Questions arise in Professor Finch's quantum physics class. The article, though carefully worded, hinted at the advanced nature of a certain visiting scholar's questions and the unusually aggressive response from the tenured professor. It didn't name Aris, but Finch knew exactly who it was about. He was incandescent with rage. How dare anyone question his authority, his intellect, his pedagogy? He stormed into the department head's office, his loyal crony, Dr. Peterson. "Peterson," he roared, "that Thorne fellow has gone too far. He's planting stories in the press. He's trying to undermine me, to destroy my reputation. We need to shut him down permanently. I want a full academic integrity hearing convened against him. Charge him with plagiarism. Yes, plagiarism, and disruptive behavior, and misrepresentation on his visiting scholar application. Find something, anything. I want him expelled from this university by the end of the week." Dr. Peterson, though privately terrified of Finch's rages and increasingly uneasy about the whole Thorne affair, he'd actually discreetly tried to Google Aris Thorne physicist and had been momentarily stunned by the results before Finch had burst in and interrupted him, was too weak-willed to resist. The formal academic integrity hearing for visiting scholar Aris Thorne was scheduled for the following Friday. The charges: persistent disruptive classroom behavior, demonstrated lack of academic preparedness for graduate-level study, and suspected misrepresentation of academic credentials. It was a kangaroo court in the making, designed for one purpose: to humiliate and expel Aris Thorne. Aris received the official summons to the hearing. He read the trumped-up charges with a profound weariness, but also a flicker of something else in his deep, calm eyes, a glint of cold, hard, diamond-like resolve. Professor Finch wanted a hearing. Professor Finch wanted a spectacle. Professor Finch wanted to pass judgment. Aris Thorne, Nobel Laureate, one of the most brilliant scientific minds of his generation, picked up his phone. He didn't call a lawyer. He called his longtime friend and personal publicist, a woman who handled media for presidents and kings, a woman who knew how to orchestrate a global media event. "Eleanor, darling," he said, his voice calm and resonant. "Remember that exclusive interview we discussed, the one about the future of scientific ethics and intellectual freedom in academia? I believe the time is ripe, and I have a rather compelling case study to present. Live from Oakhaven University. Yes, next Friday afternoon. And Eleanor," he added, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, "ensure the major networks are there, all of them, and perhaps alert the Nobel Committee's press office in Stockholm. I have a feeling this particular academic discourse is going to make international news. Professor Finch is about to get his 15 minutes of fame, or perhaps infamy." The stage was set for a showdown far grander and far more public than anything Professor Alistair Finch, in his wildest, most arrogant dreams, could ever have conceived. He thought he was about to expel a stupid student. He had no idea he was about to be publicly dissected by a living legend, with the entire world watching. The academic integrity hearing for visiting scholar Aris Thorne was a masterclass in predetermined conclusions. Held in a stuffy, windowless seminar room, it was presided over by Dr. Peterson, Professor Finch's visibly nervous and obsequious department head. Professor Alastair Finch himself acted as the chief prosecutor, his voice dripping with malicious satisfaction as he presented his irrefutable evidence of Aris's disruptive classroom behavior, lack of academic preparedness, and gross disrespect for scholarly authority. His evidence consisted mainly of out-of-context quotes from Aris's insightful questions, exaggerated accounts from his sycophantic doctoral students about Aris's arrogant demeanor, and his own pompous interpretations of Aris's quiet, thoughtful note-taking as proof of his inability to follow the lecture. Aris Thorne was given a perfunctory 10 minutes to defend himself. He spoke calmly, logically, refuting each baseless accusation with quiet dignity and unassailable reason. He pointed out that his questions were intended to foster deeper academic discussion, that his notes were for his own scholarly reflection, and that his academic credentials, submitted as part of his visiting scholar application, were impeccable and verifiable. His defense was, of course, completely ignored. The verdict, delivered by Dr. Peterson after a sham deliberation that lasted less than 5 minutes, was swift and brutal. "Mr. Aris Thorne," Peterson intoned, avoiding Aris's gaze, "this committee finds you guilty of conduct unbecoming a visiting scholar at Oakhaven University and of failing to meet the rigorous academic standards expected at this institution. We therefore recommend your immediate termination from the visiting scholar program and your permanent expulsion from all Oakhaven University academic activities." Professor Finch smirked, a look of pure, triumphant malice spreading across his face. He had won. He had crushed the insignificant black man who had dared to question him. He felt a surge of vindictive pleasure. Aris Thorne received the official letter of expulsion later that afternoon. He read it, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at the small framed photograph on his modest desk, the one of him in Stockholm, the Nobel Prize medal gleaming around his neck. A very faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. He picked up his secure satellite phone. "Eleanor, darling," he said to his publicist, his voice calm and resonant, "it's Aris. The academic discourse at Oakhaven University has reached its rather predictable denouement. Yes, exactly as we anticipated. The university has made its decision, and now I believe it's time for me to make mine, rather more publicly. Is the network ready for our exclusive interview? Prime time, you say? Excellent. I have a rather illuminating story to share about the current state of intellectual freedom, academic integrity, and perhaps even a touch of old-fashioned prejudice at a certain American institution of higher learning. Oh, and Eleanor," he added, a glint of steel in his voice, "ensure the international affiliates pick this up, especially in Stockholm, Berlin, and Geneva. I believe some of my colleagues on various prize committees might find it noteworthy." The following evening, just as Professor Alastair Finch was settling down with a glass of expensive sherry to celebrate his victory over Aris Thorne, his phone began to ring incessantly. It was his department head, Dr. Peterson, his voice a panicked squeak. "Alastair, turn on CNS News, now, Channel 7. Finch, annoyed, switched on his large television. And there, being interviewed live by Serena Khan, one of the world's most respected and feared investigative journalists, was Aris Thorne. But he was not the unassuming, quietly dressed visiting scholar. He was Dr. Aris Thorne, Nobel Laureate, looking distinguished and authoritative in a tailored suit, the Nobel medal discreetly but unmistakably pinned to his lapel. "Oh, and so, Dr. Thorne," Serena Khan was saying, her expression grim, "you're telling our global audience that after you, a recipient of the Nobel Prize in Physics for your groundbreaking work on unified field theory, respectfully posed a challenging but legitimate scientific question in Professor Alastair Finch's graduate seminar at Oakhaven University, you were subjected to public humiliation, baseless accusations of incompetence, and have now been formally expelled from the university on trumped-up charges, That is regrettably an accurate summary of my recent experiences as a visiting scholar at Oakhaven, Ms. Khan, Eris replied, his voice calm, dignified, but carrying an undertone of profound disappointment. It appears that at this particular institution, or at least within certain influential factions of its faculty, intellectual curiosity that deviates from established dogma is not welcomed as an opportunity for growth, but is instead met with personal vilification and institutional reprisal. My attempts to engage in robust academic discourse were characterized as disruption and arrogance. My credentials, which include not only the Nobel, but also chairs at 3 of the world's leading research universities and authorship of over 200 peer-reviewed publications, were apparently deemed insufficient to warrant even basic professional courtesy, let alone a thoughtful scientific rebuttal. He then, with devastating precision and a complete lack of personal rancor, calmly laid out the entire sordid affair. Finch's initial unhinged outburst, the subsequent campaign of academic sabotage, the biased integrity hearing, the trumped-up charges, and the formal letter of expulsion, a copy of which his publicist had, with perfect timing, just released to the international press. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The facts themselves were a damning indictment. The fallout was instantaneous and cataclysmic. Oakhaven University's switchboard melted down. The university president, a man who prided himself on Oakhaven's, now rapidly evaporating, international reputation, was reportedly apoplectic. Alumni, donors, and the global academic community erupted in a firestorm of outrage and condemnation. Oakhaven University expels Nobel laureate for asking a question, screamed the online headlines. Finchgate and Shame of Oakhaven trended globally on social media. The Nobel Committee in Stockholm issued a terse, icily worded statement expressing its profound concern and disappointment. Professor Alistair Finch watched the broadcast, his sherry glass slipping from his nerveless fingers to shatter on his expensive Persian rug. His face was a mask of utter, abject terror. His career, his reputation, his entire world had just been incinerated on live international television by the quiet, unassuming, stupid student he had so arrogantly, so cruelly dismissed. The university president didn't even wait for the interview to end. He called an emergency, middle-of-the-night press conference. Standing before a barrage of cameras, looking pale and shaken, he announced, "The immediate and unconditional reversal of Dr. Eris Thorne's expulsion, accompanied by the university's deepest, most profound, and unreserved public apology to Dr. Thorne for the inexcusable and shameful treatment he had endured. The immediate suspension, pending summary dismissal, of Professor Alistair Finch for gross academic misconduct, egregious abuse of professorial authority, actions bringing the university into profound global disrepute, and a demonstrated lack of basic scholarly integrity. 3. The immediate resignation of Dr. Peterson as head of the physics department, and the launching of a full, independent, external investigation into the academic climate, ethical standards, and pedagogical practices within the entire Oakhaven University Physics Department, CUR. And finally, with a flourish clearly designed for maximum damage control, the president announced the immediate establishment of the Dr. Eris Thorne International Endowed Chair for the Advancement of Theoretical Physics and Academic Freedom at Oakhaven University, to be funded by a $10 million emergency allocation from the university's endowment, with an open invitation to Dr. Thorne to become its first lifetime tenured occupant should he ever deign to grace Oakhaven with his presence again. Alistair Finch was, indeed, summarily fired the next morning. He became an instant pariah in the academic world, his name a byword for arrogant incompetence and prejudiced intellectual tyranny. No reputable university would touch him. His published works were quietly removed from reading lists. He was last seen applying for a job tutoring high school physics, and even that was a long shot. Dr. Eris Thorne, in a subsequent, brief written statement, graciously acknowledged the university's apology and the establishment of the chair in his name. He stated he hoped it would genuinely foster a renewed commitment to true intellectual inquiry, robust academic freedom, and a university environment where all voices, regardless of perceived status or background, are treated with respect, and where challenging questions are seen not as threats, but as precious opportunities for growth and discovery. He politely declined the offer of the chair, stating his existing research commitments at other institutions required his full attention. He then quietly left Oak Haven, his point having been made with the devastating precision of a perfectly executed experiment. The final scene. 1 year later. At Oak Haven University, the physics department is undergoing a vibrant, much-needed renaissance under new, enlightened leadership. The first recipient of the Dr. Aris Thorne International Scholarship for Excellence in Theoretical Physics, a brilliant young black woman from an underprivileged background, is animatedly debating a complex quantum theory with a group of engaged, respectful fellow students and a young, open-minded new professor. The atmosphere is one of joyful, collaborative discovery. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit, cluttered office in a small, unaccredited online correspondence college, a disgraced Alastair Finch, looking gaunt and bitter, is miserably attempting to explain basic Newtonian mechanics to a single, bored-looking student via a grainy webcam. He clicks on a news feed during his break and sees a headline: Nobel Laureate Dr. Aris Thorne unveils next breakthrough in unified field theory, hailed as Einstein's heir. Finch winces, a spasm of pure, impotent envy and regret crossing his face. He quickly closes the browser. The final shot lingers on the gleaming bronze plaque outside Oak Haven University's newly refurbished physics auditorium, now renamed Thorne Hall. The plaque reads, Thorne Hall, dedicated to the unfettered pursuit of knowledge and intellectual justice for all. The imagined audience would be giving a standing ovation. That's not just academic karma, that's Nobel-level ownage. Finch got his PhD in public humiliation. Dr. Thorne didn't just win, he rewrote the syllabus of justice.